Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast,
where our goal is to inform and educate our listeners on matters related to finance, legal, insurance, accounting, and other interests that are of personal and business nature.
We hope you will find our content useful as well as entertaining. The Expert Network Team consists of Carl Frank of A&I Financial, Mike Miller of Miller & Associates CPAs, Jeff Cromendike of Security First Insurance Agency, and I'm Nathan Merrill. I'm an attorney at Goodspeed & Merrill.
Together, our independent team combines our expertise to provide you insights and solutions, some straightforward, some profound, for real-life opportunities we see on a daily basis. We hope you enjoy the information contained in today's podcast and find it useful. If you'd like to learn more or desire to meet with any of the Expert Network team members in person, you can contact us at info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
And we encourage you to take advantage of a free consultation with any of our team members. Just mention this podcast when you schedule your appointment.
Now on to today's podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast. I'm Carl Frank with A&I Financial Services, and with us today, we've got a full house. To my right, as usual, Nathan Merrill.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And across the table, we've got Jeff Cromendike with Security First Insurance. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure.
So awesome.
It is, isn't it? It's great to have everybody together. And on the Zoom is Mike Miller, CPA with Miller & Associates. How are you, Mike? All right. Our special guest today is Francois Giguere, Certified Financial Planner with A&I Financial Services, and we are so privileged to have Francois here today. We're going to talk about the second act in life, or really ought to be saying the second period, because our guest is a hockey celeb. And we're going to just dive right into today's topic. For anybody who's ever switched careers, anybody who's ever left a very successful career and just done what they wanted to do, Francois' story will probably appeal to you. And if you're still working at a job where you may be switching in the near future, you may pick up some good advice about how to make that switch and what to do in the next stage of life. If you don't know Francois' story, we'll just let him tell a part of it, but he'll be very modest, so we might have to interject and brag a little bit about him, because during his years with the Colorado Avalanche, they won the Stanley Cup twice. So it's a fantastic story, and he's a fantastic guy and a great teammate. Francois, welcome to Expert Network Team podcast.
I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Thanks. And also, as a quick precursor, I'm going to harken back to our podcast it might have been actually 6 months ago. We talked about kind of our book recommendations, things that were influential or had an impression on us. I think, Francois, your experience reflects one of the books I recommend, which is called, it's so meaningful, I forgot the title of it. The book was called The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything. And one thing he talks about in that book, and I think this relates to you, Francois, is how life is not linear. We often start out our lives thinking, here's my career path. Here's how I'm going to get from point A to point B, and it's going to go this way. And we think in linear terms in life, but sometimes life zigzags. And those zigzags don't reflect necessarily negative deviations from the plan. They reflect or represent opportunities we've taken to pursue different things, to explore opportunities and experiences that we didn't actually contemplate when we set our life plan. I suspect that perhaps a little bit of your life's journey may reflect that kind of non-linearness, and it's important for us to embrace that if we really want to take advantage of the things that life gives us. But now, with that said, I want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, I want to answer to that because I'm French-Canadian, and in Canada, especially in Quebec, if you're French, you don't move much. You stay in Quebec because there's not a lot of French speakers outside of Canada, outside of Quebec City. So, when in 1995 I went to my wife and I said, I have the opportunity to move to the United States to go to Denver, Colorado, her first thought was, what the freak are you talking about? And I said, I think this would be a great opportunity for us. And, at the time I had 2 young kids. And I said, I think it'd be a great journey. But for her, she had never thought that we'd leave Quebec. So it was a big change. And today I think she'd be the first to say it was a great experience for our family and what we gave our kids. But it was a huge decision for the family to move. And for her, she's a physician, so she had to reestablish herself. The advantage that I had, I was in hockey in Quebec, so I was moving to Denver, but I would be dealing with the same people, the agents for contract negotiations, things like that. So the change for me wasn't as substantial as her, but for her it was huge. So it was a big change for sure.
So was that something that just came up, or help me understand, you pursued it, or it was offered to you, or it came out of the blue?
Well, in Quebec, we were trying to get a new building. We were having trouble making money as a franchise. And the ownership in Quebec decided to look at maybe selling the franchise. At first, I think it was just to put pressure on the Canadian government to subsidize a new building. But when that didn't work, they were in serious talk to move the franchise from Quebec to Denver. And when the franchise was moved, 4 or 5 individuals from Quebec were asked if they wanted to move with the team, apart from players and coaches. And I was one of the 4 or 5 that was asked if I was interested in moving.
So, big asterisk there. Nathan just exposed his sports trivia ignorance in terms of the origins of the Colorado Avalanche. I am not a native, so I am excused, but I apologize for that.
Actually, Nate, I think the Jazz are for sale right now, and maybe
Never.
moving to Quebec. I'm just telling you.
Well, we all know the Jazz originated in Utah because that's synonymous with Utah as jazz, right? So
Exactly.
So that was your transition from Quebec to Colorado. Now you have a storied career in Colorado. Tell us a little bit about that next transition.
Well, my transition from Colorado, we won the Cup for the second time in 2001, and we were all a bunch of French Canadian. And my goal was to be able to become general manager. And I thought that if I went in another organization and wasn't part of a group of French Canadian, that would help me become general manager. So after the Cup in 2001, I had one of my friends that became a general manager with the Dallas Stars, and he asked me if I wanted to go there. So to me, that was an appealing opportunity. It would kind of give me the chance to see what it would be like to become GM, because we were going to kind of do it together. So I took that opportunity. In 2006, I went to Dallas, and I was there for 3 years. And when Pierre Lacroix decided that he was going to step down as general manager, he interviewed me to see if I was interested in coming back, and I was. So I came back in 2009 to be general manager of the Avalanche.
So to me, you're making this sound like everything has just fallen into place for you. Where are the kind of the nuances, or the outside of that original relocation from Quebec to Colorado, kind of where did your actual path deviate from probably where you had perceived you would go?
Well, in hockey, what happened, it's when I took over the team had a lot of success. Our players had become older. We had traded a lot of our draft picks to make goals for the Cup. So our team started to really go down performance-wise. So after my third year as general manager, I was fired. And in hockey, the way it works, and it's like that, I would assume in most sports, the window of opportunity to find a job opens for about a 2-month period during the off-season, and then it closes, and then it opens up the next off-season. So for me, I went through a kind of a grieving period, because you get fired, it's really tough, ego-wise, and then you go through interviews and you don't get jobs. If you finish second, you still don't get the job, and there's only a few jobs that open each year. So you got to a point where you get rejected. You're grieving because you lost your job. I got to a point where I said, I have to take control of my professional life. I can't let this industry dictate what's going to happen to me. So after 3 years, I decided now I have to take control of my life. I was 50 years old, so now you have to say, okay, who's going to be interested in hiring a 50-year-old guy that has no experience in a new industry? So I have to figure what that new industry was going to be. I'm a chartered accountant by education, and my financial planner that was in Dallas, I talked to a few people, but he's one of the guys that I talked to, and he said, I think you would be good in our industry. Why don't you do that? And I said, yeah, but who's going to hire a 50-year-old guy? And he's the one that recommended that. He said, if I was you, I would do my CFP, and that's going to kind of prove that you're serious about this career. So, I went through a year of studying, going back to as if I was a college student, studying 7-8 hours a day for my CFP. I did that for 9 months, and when I was finishing my class, the last class we do is a simulation, and the teacher at the time, she asked me, so, where are you working? And so I said, I'm not working. I'm doing this, and now I'm going to try to find a job. And she's the one that she was part of the local FPA foundation, and she knew Carl, and she said, I think I know somebody that's looking for somebody. You probably don't fit the profile of what he's looking for, but I still think it would be worth for him to meet you and you to meet him. So, that's how I met Carl, and we had meetings over a few weeks. We would meet. We met probably 5-6 times, and Carl decided to take a chance on me. And I was looking for a smaller firm. I wanted a mentor to teach me, because I knew that I needed to go through different steps, and I couldn't skip any steps. I wanted to go through them as fast as possible, but I knew I had to go through 10 steps. So I wanted a mentor to help me do that as quickly as possible. And from my point of view, not that I have enormous opportunities, but it seemed to be a good fit here at A&I.
Wow. Yeah. Francois, great to hear your story. Known you for quite a few years. We've even attended a few Avs games together, which is always amazing. We can get some of the background and the inside scoop.
It's like having your own private color commentator.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was really great. We had him at a suite one night, so it was great, and great to get to know your wife actually as well. And so I want to go back there, because really what you're doing here at A&I really isn't that interesting. Yeah.
No, not at all, Jeff.
I mean, compared to the previous life, right? But tell us a little bit about back office and the things that are going on behind the scenes in a professional sports world. And for many of us, we don't even really
on
even
a
know.
No names basis, of course.
Yeah, no names, right? But many of us don't even know what like a GM does, what they're responsible for. Clearly, I think the buck stops with you. At least I've learned that with John Elway and others that I've heard. But tell us a little bit about that dynamic, what it's like to work in that culture, and even the pressure that maybe even led to just saying, hey, look, I want something like financial services, because what I just came from was really hard. Tell us a little bit about that a little more.
Well, first of all, I had 20 years in the industry. The first 16, 17, I was an assistant, and you don't realize how good you have it when you're the assistant, because you're allowed to have as many opinions as you want. You give those opinions, and it's somebody else's responsibility to make a decision with that. So once you've expressed your opinion, you go to sleep, you're fine. When I became a general manager, the first 4 months, I was living downtown. My family was still in Dallas. And I would be up at 3 a.m, working out and trying to figure what to do. It was such a change to have to adjust to the extra stress that you were going through. Like, I would wake up in the morning and I would have a list of 25 to-dos. I'd sell 4 or 5. I'd create another 10, and now my list was up to 30, and the next day up to 40. And so I would say it took me probably 3 months just to be able to learn to live with that extra burden. Because, like you said, in a hockey, the general manager is probably the most powerful person in the organization, versus in football, it's the head coach. In hockey, historically, it's been the GM. The GM makes the trades. The The GM is responsible for the drafting of players, the development of players. You know, you're the boss for 50 players that are in the organization, 25 scouts, another 15 staff. So you have 100 people that you have to oversee. They're all over the world. So you spend time with them in Europe, you spend time with them in the States and Canada. And, you know, you want to do a good job, so you really try to. I was on the road 16 days a month. I would either be traveling with the team, and if I wasn't traveling with the team, I try to go see some of our players that were drafted, that were playing in college or juniors, and get to meet my staff to learn if we had the right people. And you make trips to Europe to see your prospects that are in Europe. So it was very busy. And the first little while, it's very glamorous because you have these chartered planes with 50 first-class seats. You stay in the Ritz's hotels of the world. You eat at the best places. But after a while, it really gets tough to be on the road 15, 16 days. And, you know, you come in at 2, 3 in the morning, and then the next morning you have to be in the office. Like, I don't know how the players do it. I was watching them play. They were playing, and sometimes you play back-to-back. You get home at 2, 3 in the morning, and, you know, the fans don't see what they go through, and you see the players in the plane with ice packs on shoulders, on the knees, and so you know they're hurting, and the next night they're playing, and maybe they're not playing the best game, and fans think it's because they're lazy, but they don't know that some of these guys have, you know, physical issues, and they're tired, and when they get back home and they have young families and they've been gone for 8, 9 days, well, you know, their wife are like anybody else. When you've been gone for 9 days and they're taking care of the kids, they need a break. So now they're asking the players to spend time with the kids. So it's a lot for all of them. So it is very glamorous, and I wouldn't change that experience, but it wears on you after a while, being on the road so much.
Mike, you got anything?
I did, yes. And I agree with that. And I always tell my, well, now they're older, but when my children were younger, you never know your degree, the doors that they're going to open. It could be in engineering, it could be as a lawyer or an accountant. Like, I became a sports executive because I got hired to run the accounting department of the Quebec Nordiques. And at the time the GM fired the coach, he took on both jobs, and they needed somebody to do a lot of the administrative negotiating work. I started doing that. After 6, 9 months of doing both the accounting and that, the owner said he can't do both, either hire him or hire somebody else so that he can focus on accounting. And they hired me to go on the hockey side and hired a new person to run the accounting. So you never know the doors that are going to be open. So that's the importance of studying.
You know, that is actually a good segue to, I think one of the other questions I have to follow up to Mike's is, what was the primary experiential base that helped you do well as a manager of a sports franchise, and what experiences? So, 2-part question. Then after you answer that one is, what of those experiences as a sports franchise manager do you now employ, or what perspective does that give you to employ as a CFP?
Well, in hockey, in sports in general, I think the two qualities you need, it's you have to be extremely loyal, and I think you have to be a team player. And I think that at ANI, those are some of the values that I've tried to bring. I tried to be as best a team player. We're 10 financial advisors. We're 15 in the office. So, to me, it becomes real important to pull my weight in every way possible, that it be with our client care, with owners, with the other advisors. Like, that's how I grew up, that if you want to be successful, you do that. And to me, loyalty is important, because in hockey, you go through highs and lows. And, when you're going through a low, it's easy to start pointing the finger at somebody else. And those that do that don't last very long in our profession. So you need to, to go through the tough times together. And that's the sign of a successful team, when nobody starts pointing the finger when things are bad.
Yeah, that was a great question. I thought there has to be a translation here of some sort, which is, I think, one of the key takeaways for our listeners today, is to understand that our experience does build, and it's not for loss, right? And it can be transferable to other areas, professions, so on and so forth. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm not sure how much longer or how much time we have left here this afternoon on this podcast, but I would love to hear, now that you're in the financial services business, what does your ideal client look like?
Well, I wanted to stay connected to the game of hockey, so I have a lot of people that are clients that are from the hockey industry. I don't have any players, but I have coaches, I have people in management, I have trainers, I even have referees. So I've never been this good friends with referees. So those are the ideal clients, and for me, it gives me a chance to stay connected to the game of hockey, because when I'm with them, I can talk a lot about hockey, and I can even help them, especially with the coaches. I also represent coaches. I negotiate contract for coaches. So I think I can bring to them a perspective that's unique as a agent. It's that I've been in the seat of their boss, so I know how the boss is thinking. So when they go through different frustrations, I can say, well, did you think about maybe that's what he's going through, and that's why he hasn't talked to you in a day or whatever? Because, when coaches get to a point where they lose 2-3 games, Jim doesn't talk to them for a day, they start to worry, okay, what's happening? Is he thinking of firing me? And sometimes they are, but sometimes there's other reasons, because there's a lot of things that they have on their plates. I can bring that perspective to my relationship with my clients that are the coaches.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and I think that's one of the things I was getting at, was there's always some sort of residual that carries over, where you don't have to leave behind your prior experience in your existence and kind of wash your hands of it, but you can really leverage it and be of benefit. I suspect you'd be able to apply some of those same lessons and concepts to your non-sports related clients. I mean, just kind of having, because that environment was so intense, because you were under such extreme pressure, just when you have clients that are going through that, when we're going through like COVID and people are under that kind of externality, pressure, you have a bit of a perspective you can offer them in terms of like, pressure happens, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, I went through getting fired, so I was raised up to this great position, and then in a day you become a zero, so you have to go through that. So I think it helps you too to be more empathetic to people, because you went through that. So you went through, like I said, to me it was a grieving process, as if I'd lost a person that I loved. Like it was really tough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got one final question, I guess, that I'm gonna give you the option of answering two answers, which would be, in your career, and of course, all of us were following the Avs back, when you guys were winning cups and so on and so forth. But as a general manager, if there were maybe one or two players that you really, really enjoyed managing, working with, partnering with, who would those be?
It might surprise people because oftentimes it's players that don't have big profiles. Like I was really close to one of the backup goalies, that was Craig Billington. He'd often come into my office, and he was a guy, he was getting a little older, and he was trying to figure what he was going to do with his second career. So he was one of the guys that I was close to, and when I became a general manager, he was already part of the management team, so we became close. And then another guy with whom I got really close was David Oliver. When I was in Dallas, he was a player that was not good enough to be 100% in the NHL, but he would come and play 10 games and go down in the minors. And I was responsible for the minor league team in Dallas, and he had an offer to go play in Europe at 3 times the money that he was making in Dallas. And he came to me to ask me to void his contract so he could go there. And I told him that I wouldn't let him do that. And because we needed him for his leadership, and he stayed, and he did a great job. And when I became a general manager, he was my first hire. I hired him to run our AHL team because I had appreciated everything he had done as a player when we needed him, that now I wanted to give him a chance in hockey later on.
Francois, that's a great story, and it just speaks volumes about your character and integrity. It's been so much fun to get to know you over all these years working with you. And on behalf of the Expert Network team, we just want to wish you a fantastic day, and all of our listeners create a beautiful day.
Happy holidays.
That'd be Merry Christmas.
That too.
And thank you for having me.